all the traditional arts have something really great to offer people. And training in them offers people something really valuable to their lives. I'm Scott Rodell, and I guess you could say I'm a professional swordsman. Sounds a bit anachronistic, but mostly what I do is travel around teaching people how to use a sword. It's a totally different thing if you practice martial arts versus martial sports or some kind of game that originally came from martial arts but has been changed into a game.
Well, definitely. I mean, this is a problem in historical swordsmanship today, is that people are always practicing with the same weapons. You know, whatever weapons their school specialty, say the Jian, for example, their classmates are always using Jian, so they always learn to fight Jian versus Jian or saber to saber or whatever.
I felt like I could push you back really well with this just simple thrust, you know, and change up the timing.
Right, definitely, definitely. So the first thing, most likely, I'm going to do is I want to see what your timing is, and I'm going to be using, you know, these blocking kind of ge cuts and swiveling my body and getting out of the way so that, you know, I just don't get overwhelmed by you, because you've also got a lot of power coming.
If somebody's really coming at you with a piece of wood that weighs 1.5 pounds or 2 pounds, or in some systems that weighs more than that, and even with some protective gear on, you can really be hurt. It's truly dangerous. There's potential for very real fear to be there. And in that situation, if you learn to stay calm and focused and not to get nervous, and not to react with anger, not to let your ego boil over, then you've got a skill that you can use every single day. One of the things that's really helped me in my study of swordsmanship is access to real weapons. Because the question often comes up, is it really important to practice with this type of sword that was really like people used in the past? And so we know from looking at the regulations what stones they had, what style of fittings they had, and even the length blade that rank could carry. I think that actually is quite important, because these things were not created in a vacuum. This Jian was clearly made for serious combat. And the reason I say that is because of the edge geometry. The antique swords definitely help to connect you with the historical part of swordsmanship. In a way, you could say they are history. Also, one interesting thing about this sword is that it has an inscription that says, "Kill the demons," which leads us to believe that this was used during the Taiping Rebellion, when the Taiping rebels thought of the Manchus as not only foreign invaders, but actually as demons. You know, this was really used. It saw combat. So this is a piece of history. And it was here before we were here, and it's going to be here after we're here. So in a lot of ways, we're just the caretakers of this piece of history. If we look at these arts from a modern perspective, then we end up warping them and changing them. And I don't think we can practice something mindfully if we don't understand really where it came from. If we're changing it before we even understand it, then we're likely to be making very serious mistakes. And so I'd like to really help not only promote my own art, but other people's as well, so that we can really go out and see what's left of these traditional arts, of the traditional sword arts, and what's being recreated. In the case of our Chinese stuff, there's almost nothing written. And what there is, it's just really hard to read, because it's often written in kind of a code language, or it's mentioning, well, you know, when your opponent uses you know, snake sticks out tongue, you should respond with flowery belt technique. And you're thinking, well, that's great. You know, what the heck is that? You know, unless you're from that system and know what movements they're talking about, you can't interpret it. There's no pictures to go with it. There's no videotape, you know, from the Ming Dynasty. So but we have the forms, and everything is codified into the forms. They're like textbooks. So once you start handling the old weapons, once you start understanding the basic cuts, doing cutting work with the swords, you actually cut something to understand how a sword really cuts and works, you can go back to those forms and read them like a book. You know, you see these guys doing European swordsmanship. They're doing it all from manuals. Their arts died out completely, but they have manuals. And, you know, can you imagine reading medieval German? And they have to go back and read this medieval German and reinterpret those and look at paintings. And so this is a kind of archaeology in a way. You know, you're going back and you're saying, well, what was it really like? And you're bringing it back to life.